the mission to create positive social change. It is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Ashok Kamath. An alumnus of IIT Bombay, Mr. Kamath left a successful corporate career in 2004 to focus on the development of Akshara Foundation, a public-private partnership with the mission of every child in school and learning well. Over the past 5 years, Akshara's initiatives have positively impacted over 7 million children in primary schools across Karnataka, Orissa, and Andhra Pradesh. Additionally, their Android-based digital property, Building Blocks, has received multiple international recognitions. Mr. Kamath is also a co-founder and trustee of Pratham Books, dedicated to providing high-quality children's books in multiple languages. His outstanding contributions to society have earned him the Distinguished Alumnus Award from IIT Bombay, the prestigious Satyendra K. Dubey Memorial Award from IIT Kanpur, and in 2019, he was named Namma Bangalorean of the Year for his contributions to the city of Bangalore. Please join me in welcoming to the stage a visionary leader and the true champion for education, Mr. Ashok Kamath. Yes, sir. It is my distinct privilege to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Shukla Bose. Dr. Bose is the founder of Parikrma Humanity Foundation, an organization dedicated to bridging the gap in urban India by ensuring every child receives quality education. With over 26 years in the hospitality sector and more than 20 years in social reform and education advocacy, she has significantly influenced education policies at both the state and national levels. She has received numerous awards, including the Pride of Karnataka Award and the Education 2.0 Outstanding Leadership Award. Her work with Karnataka Knowledge Commission and the National Focus Group has been pivotal in shaping education governance. As a TED speaker and recognized globally, Dr. Bose's journey is an inspiration to many. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shukla Bose to the stage. Professor Soham Sahu will be facilitating the panel discussion. Dr. Sahu is an assistant professor at the Center for Public Policy in IIMB. His research interest is broadly in development economics with a focus on education, labor, and political economy. Dr. Soham holds a PhD in quantitative economics from Indian Statistical Institute, Delhi. Before joining IIM Bangalore, he worked as a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Economics, University of Goenton, Germany. Please come on stage, sir. I would like to welcome Mr. Ashok Kamath to podium to share his insights with us about Akshara Foundation. Sorry? You're up to you, sir. Whatever is your convenience.
Is it okay if I sit there? I can then see you guys. Yeah. Good morning, and thank you for coming on a Sunday morning. So I think the theme for this event here is ideate to elevate, right? So I'm going to take you on a slightly different journey. Shukla has her own journey and I have my own. And interestingly, the education space is so vast that there is room for multiple models to actually flourish and grow. And each one, there is no value judgment one over another. Everything needs to be looked at carefully. And so the challenge for all of us really is, and for those of you who are aspiring to be in the social sector, is how do you scale? How do you scale sustainably, which is a big challenge? And how do you make it simple enough so that it's replicable? Because you can't be everywhere, and it therefore has to be easily replicable. So I think, and Shukla will agree with me, that the first thing that you need really is passion. You know, it is a moral tragedy when you see that our children don't get the education that they need to get. But more so, I think it's an economic tragedy for the country because you're losing the demographic dividend that's so widely talked about everywhere. I'm sure all the professors here talk about the demographic dividend during the course of their lectures. And the demographic dividend comes but once in the lifetime of a nation. It is not that you get it every 10 years. It's just once that you get when the transition happens. And if we don't leverage on that transition, then you've lost the demographic dividend, right? So while it's a moral tragedy for children, it's an economic tragedy for the nation. So you got to remember that. And therefore, you need the passion to say, can we ideate to elevate, right? The second is that you will notice that while we don't spend the required 6% on education, we probably spend half of that amount, which is still a significant amount, right? But the translation of public spending to desired outcomes is a very highly inefficient process. So you have to look at how can you leverage your smarts into, again, ideating to elevate, right? It's important to see how you can translate that effectively. Now, if you look at all of this, at Akshara, which I chair, we've come to the conclusion that you need not an intervention, but you need a model. And when you start to think about a model, you have to first map out all the stakeholders to that model. And, the child is a stakeholder, yes, but the parents, the community, the government is a large stakeholder. And as a not-for-profit or an NGO that we call ourselves, if we don't have government buy-in, then there is no way you can scale up into the system, right? Plus the community members, plus other NGOs. I mean, there is no reason why NGOs can't collaborate and synergize their skills, for the greater good, right? So if you look at all of that, you need a model. And in our case, we came up with a 6-box theory, which was wrapped around, and around the 6 boxes, we wrapped a layer of technology to it, right? So what are these 6 boxes? The first, of course, is government buy-in. Why is it important? Because an NGO can never raise the money to scale. It's impossible. I mean, you can collect all of Bill Gates' money, but you can still not scale the way a government can, right? So at Akshara, we focus on math and math alone. And for the last 12, 13 years, that's what we've been doing, and we are there in every government school in the states of Karnataka and Odisha, and 2,500 schools in Andhra Pradesh. So that's a total of about 95,000 schools. But remember that for us to be successful, it has to go through the system. It can't be that Akshara employs 95,000 teachers, because if we can, then we would be government, right? So you need to actually figure out how to work the system better. So the government buy-in is important. And I can tell you that for every 1 rupee that Akshara raises and spends, we make sure that the governments and the communities spend between 4 and 5 rupees. So when we scale, it is sustainable. So if Akshara is not there tomorrow for some reason, and we should think about, getting out, we can't be doing this forever, right? So you have to get out at some point. So as you get out, somebody else takes over from you seamlessly, right? So when you scale, you have to scale sustainably. So you need the government buy-in for that to happen. Without government buy-in, you can't walk into government schools. Without government buy-in, you can't get access to government teachers. Now, you could argue and say the teachers are not great. I won't, debate that with you, but there are some great teachers too, and you have to leverage them. So all of this cannot happen without government buy-in, right? But I think first and foremost, if you did not have some kind of a great solution in terms of pedagogy or teaching learning materials, you would not get an entry into the system. So when we started this math effort, we said, can we talk to a few hundred teachers and find out why is it that they are unable to teach math effectively? Remember, this is first to fifth grade math. I mean, which can't be very difficult, right? How many of you agree it's not difficult? Everybody agrees, right? So it can't be difficult. So why do teachers find it so difficult to teach that, right? And the answer was pretty simple. The teachers were taking a 6-year-old mind and teaching that child abstract concepts. See, at that age, hard to grasp abstraction. Whereas math has to be taught from the concrete to the abstract. So you need something to play with. It can be beads, it can be little twigs, it can be anything, but you need something to play with. So we ended up creating a design for a kit, which now is there in every single school that I've talked about. Procured by the government, not from us. We don't sell anything, but through the system. They had a tender. We wrote the technical specs for the kit. They floated a tender. They negotiated. They got it procured and delivered to the schools. Again, a sign of sustainability, right? So when I say for every 1 rupee, we collect 4 rupees there, this is how the 4 rupees is spent, right? In the kits coming into the system. So, you were saying that children need to be taught from the concrete to the abstract. And once that is done and you have a good kit, then the teachers automatically asked us for saying, can you do training for us? And so we created a training program. Some of you may or may not be aware that typically in a state in India, you have a district broken into multiple blocks, administrative blocks, and each block has multiple clusters. And a cluster will have multiple schools, typically 6 to 10 schools. So we said Akshara will train 2 people in every cluster, right? So that creates redundancy if somebody is moving, transferred, whatever. And they in turn would train the rest of them. So a good training program was done and it's been working well. In between, good friend COVID came into the equation. So you can't train. So we said, let's convert all of that training exercises into AV form. So we currently have 25 hours of AV programming, teaching math first to fifth grade. Okay. And then we said, if we have a problem, so does every other state in this country. So we converted it into 9 languages. So we may not be in Maharashtra, but it's available in Marathi. We may not be in Gujarat, but it's available in Gujarati. Simple idea is put all of our learning in the Creative Commons so others don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is the only way you can address population scale, by sharing, right? So we did that. So the training was done. We did some sort of, jugaad around the monitoring. When I say jugaad, it means that we started with an app, it didn't work, and now I think we are on Google Forms. That works a little better. But we ask simple questions. We say, my colleagues in the research group wanted 30 questions, and I'm sure Soham will like to see 30 questions too. But I said, no, we just need 4 questions. Because each question, the outcomes of those questions should be actionable on our part. Right? So we say, okay, during the math period, was math really happening? Why? Because 30% of the time teachers don't show up. We know this from media reports and from observation. Second, if the teacher is there, was she trained? Because I can train you, but you get transferred and somebody else comes into your place. And if that number is large enough, then we have to think about what to do about it. Third, were you using the math kit that has been provided? Why? Because many teachers who've been teaching for 25 years, they say, our old method is good enough. Why do we have to adopt all this newfangled, toys? So let's not use it, right? But the whole idea was to change the methodology of learning and teaching, right? And the last was group learning happening. Group learning is a very important activity when you have little children. because they learn. I mean, you guys do peer learning or whatever, right? It's the same thing. Small groups, they learn much, much better. So we did all of that as part of the monitoring. And then when it came to assessment, we were in a jam, because if you want to do assessment at scale in 40, 50, 60,000 schools and make it transparent, it's a big challenge. Schools will always want to, again, game the system so that they don't look bad, right? So we said, what do you do now? So we took that, and the last box, the sixth box, which I call community engagement. And I said, why not we merge these two and get the community to sponsor the assessment, right? So we ended up with a concept that we call a Gram Panchayat math contest, which happens once a year. And it's highly transparent. You can't fudge this system. We found once some people taking photographs of the question papers and sending it out on WhatsApp. Unfortunately for that person, one of my colleagues was on that same WhatsApp group. So we caught it right there. And today, as a matter of routine, we send series A, B, C, and D, 4 question papers to a site. And at the last minute, one of them is picked. So series A is different from series B. The complexity is the same, but the 43 plus 72 is not going to be there across in all of them, right? So you can't really fudge that. So we created this concept. The transparency was very high, but before you implemented it, again, remember, you have to do it at scale. We had to create a cadre of education volunteers. So we worked with the community. This is part of the community engagement. So we worked with the community to create volunteers from the same villages and the Gram Panchayats, who came, and they give us 2-3 hours of their time every month. And these are usually children who are in 12th grade or first, second year of college, or even on their first jobs. In Karnataka, we have more than 55,000 such young people who conduct all these things for us. So during the Gram Panchayat contest, teachers are not allowed, parents are not allowed, we are not allowed. Only the volunteers are allowed in the arena. But we can all be sitting outside the Lakshman Rekha and watch this. But you can't prompt or do anything. First hour, the children write a test. Second hour, the test papers are corrected by means of an answer key that we provided. The third hour, the prizes are announced, right? And the money for all this is raised by the community. So when the community makes that investment, this paisa vasool has to happen. So they will make sure that it's done well and they get the results immediately. Unlike systems where you write the exam and your results come 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know, after a month. This thing comes out in 2 hours. In the third hour, the results are out there, right? And typically, and this is on the lighter side, the fourth hour we have fights. Because parents are saying, I sent my child to school for 1,000 days, 5 years, right? 200 days a year into 5 years, that's 1,000 years. And you're saying that he can't do simple addition? What are you teachers doing in the school? And the teachers are saying, I send homework, but you allow him to watch TV, but not do the homework. So there's this conflict that goes on, but they pretty much converge at the end of it all to say, okay, what do we do again? So give you a sense, I know we're running out of time, give you a sense that this past year's performance in Karnataka, we had 4,200 Gram Panchayat contests. So the communities raised and spent about 6 crores. Okay, that's a fair amount of money. We tested 470,000 children in the process. And all of this happened by mapping the stakeholders very carefully and seeing and answering the question, what's in it for me for each stakeholder? If you're unable to answer that question, what's in it for me, why should I listen to you? Right? So we did all of that. And I think we have a model now that's scalable and that's scaled sustainably. So, even without Akshara's contributions, these things can flourish. The data keeps coming. I was telling Shukla this morning that in the first 7 districts where we started this, we now have 2 people managing 7,600 schools. If that's not sustainability, tell me what is, right? So that's the thing. And so I can probably end by saying that whatever you do, it has to become politically acceptable, socially desirable, technically feasible, financially viable, and administratively doable. If you can't tick these 5 boxes, you can't scale it. Okay, thank you.
I have great respect for Ashok Kamath. I mean, he's a true visionary. So I'm really honored to be sharing the stage with him. The Parikrma story is a little different, and I'm happy that you got both of us talk about the same thing: is how can we get the children of our country, more in a learning mode, but we do it differently. And it's important for all of you here to see and hear both sides, not one against the other. We complement each other in many ways, but the pathway we have chosen is different. There are 1.5 million schools in our country. It's the largest education system. It's even larger than China. There are 8 million teachers in our country. But out of the 8 million teachers, only 2 million teachers actually go to school every day. That's really a dismal figure. What I started Parikrma after 26 years of fairly high-profile corporate life, I began in a very simple way from my kitchen table with my own life savings, and we have grown. But scaling has always been an issue for us because we believe in scaling can be different. Scaling does not always have to be horizontal. Scaling can also be vertical. And to really create excellence and use that as a role model, use that as and create in a manner where it is replicated. It can be replicated. You don't have to replicate it yourself. Okay, so the first school was on a rooftop in the slums, inside the slums. And it's very important, I'm deliberately mentioning slums, okay? It's not villages, it's inside slums in the heart of the city of Bangalore. Because slums has a totally different profile. It has a certain sense of dysfunctionality that you don't get in the villages. And it's very important for us to deal with that. So the first school was on a rooftop inside the slums with 164 students, 11 staff members. And today we have about 2,000 children in 4 schools, in a college, and we have started adopting government schools. We have adopted 7 government schools, and we have started a training center for teachers, and we have trained 5,000 teachers of government schools so that we hope that they will be able to make some difference in the schools that they teach. But one of the things that we have really stayed away from is just skill training. We don't train just skills. We are looking at whole development of a child. And the whole development of child we've created, it's possible with two factors. Is the 360-degree model, where we give them nutrition, all 3 meals in the school, total health care. We look at working with the families. We do skilling for the families. de-addiction program for the fathers. 98% of our fathers are alcoholics. 92% of our children have someone in their family in jail. That's the kind of dysfunctionality we are working with. Okay, so we have to work with that, because the idea is to create stable homes. If you're able to create stable homes, children coming from those homes will definitely pay more attention, learn faster, and actually have ambitions and aspirations of what to do in life. The main problem with deprived children coming from marginalized section is that they have very little aspirations. They have what I was telling Ashok a little while ago, what I have termed, and I did my PhD on that, is the poverty of the mind. Children from slums, orphanages have what we call the poverty of mind. They think it's not possible to do. They think that is not for me. They think I am not destined to do anything better. So we have to fight that in schools. So our focus in schools is to create sensitive schools. And we have created metrics, measurement metrics, to actually assess how is the well-being of these children improving over time. We apply that in government schools as well. And I am very happy and proud to say we are seeing shifts in the sense of well-being. We adopted a government school. I'll just give you a case of a government school in Bashittahalli, which is a little outside Bangalore, but is not considered in a village. In Bashittahalli, in Yelapuram. The teachers, of course, there's a great amount of resistance from the teachers for any kind of training, because the government school teachers, the government school teachers get paid thrice as much as I can afford to pay Parikrma teachers. Okay, so it's not salaries that is holding them back. They're really well paid. Okay, it's a system that has been created over generation. I interviewed many. I work with the government in the sense they sometimes invite me to take advice. Only 2-3% of that advice is actually implemented, but doesn't matter. I'm very happy that at least they are asking questions. But what happens is the all government school teachers think there's a fatigue in training. I've been sent for this training, that training. But when they actually come for training with our Education Transformation Center, they find it's so different. It's not a lecture. It's not. So everybody is into, teaching 300 teachers, a subject, and telling them what to do, how to do. But actually, very little time has been spent by NGOs or the government to give them the purpose of why they should teach. Why have they chosen to be teachers? That question, why, is what we teach them. Is why are you teaching? They need to understand how important their role is, because they are in a very demotivated environment. Like I'm very happy. I just wrote to Times of India recently and said, I'm so happy you're publishing stories of teachers that are doing well, because invariably it's always stories of how terrible they are. Because they need to be put, we need to motivate them. We need to give them goalposts, short goalposts that they are able to achieve. Parikrma took 13 government school teachers to Singapore at our cost. Of course, I had to beg for the money. Government did not give any money at all for it. In fact, they said, why are you taking the teachers? You should take some of the government officials. So I said, it's not like Olympics where the Indian contingent is only with pot-bellied officials and very little athletes. I am going to be taking athletes. I'm going to be taking teachers who are going to go and teach in their classroom after having seen what can be done. And so our training is getting teachers to, with the first question, I'm sure Ashok would have faced it, is you don't know these children. These children cannot learn. You know, they come from, their parents are illiterate, they are first generation children, and they are not willing to learn. This, they are not interested to learn, is a fallacy. All children are interested to learn, but you've got to create an environment which enthuses them to learn. Right? I mean, that's why, yeah. So what we did is we took these 13 teachers. We could only afford to take 13. I wish I could have taken more, to Singapore to see some of the state schools, private schools, but also to motivate them, to make them feel good. And we brought them back, and they are now in their classrooms. And one of the schools that I was talking about, the Bashir Tehli school, has got the PM Shri Award. We were in that school for only 1.5 years, but we created an environment where the teachers began to be interested to make a difference. And now I know there's no looking back for them. So what we talk about, what I was saying, in our schools, we have the 360-degree model, where we give nutrition, we give healthcare, we work with their families, their family income has increased, they are paying more attention, we do spoken English classes with the parents, they are attending, we have 100% parents teachers attendance statistics. 97% attendance of children. That's the highest in the country. Less than 1% dropout in the country, which is the lowest in the country. And how is that achieved? By the 360-degree model. Then the other thing we say is from one to end, E to E. We get our children at age 5, we work with them, we send them to universities, we try and get scholarships for them, and actually mentor them till they get jobs. I'm very proud to say that I have had a couple of Parikrma children in IIM Bangalore here. I'm very proud to say that I have a couple of students who graduated from National Law School, from IIIT. And how is that? And then, of course, I'm getting passports ready for 5 of my kids who got selected to go to study in UVC in San Diego. So it's not just giving them, as Ashok very rightly said, not just intervention. It is actually transforming lives. That's what we're doing. So we do it through the 360-degree model, and we do it through the E2E model. Our challenge is, how many Parikrma schools can we have? And that's a question that I'm being addressed most of the time. 2 questions I'm actually being addressed. One is succession model. Who's going to be my successor? And one is, how are you going to scale? To address scaling, what we have done is created the Education Transformation Center, where we are training government school teachers. We hope they will be able to bring certain amount of transformations in their schools itself. We know it'll never be the same as the Parikrma schools, but at least the attitudinal change is what is showing the difference. Then the other thing that we do is by adopting government schools. We have a tripartite agreement with a corporate Parikrma and the government schools. And all that I ask of the government schools, we tell the government that you continue to pay for the teacher salary. Anyway, there's about 8 teachers shortage in all of the schools. So we will try and make up with our own teachers there. You continue to spend whatever you're doing. You don't need to spend more. In the MOU, we say you're not going to interfere. And they have agreed. So the government doesn't interfere in all the academic decisions we take. The children sit for the same exams, but we have had many parents-teachers meeting. We've had annual sports day, we have assembly every day. These are things that don't happen in government schools. We've introduced those elements in the government schools and we are seeing change, and it is being now recognized. So the government is coming back to us and saying, can you adopt more schools? So we're looking for corporate partners that can fund that intervention that we have in the government school. So yes, for an NGO, there are three factors that you have to address. One is sustainability. So we've sustained ourselves for 21 years. The 11 staff members that I began with, 10 are still with me. Now we have 200 teachers all over. How do we sustain ourselves in the future? We have very long-term relationships with corporate. I have corporates that have been supporting us for 19 years, 20 years, and we hope they will continue. In fact, I have to give an example. Yahoo, Yahoo, the big organization, they have been supporting one school of ours. And they got sold off, right? Now Yahoo has become Verizon. But in Palo Alto, in the terms of sale, Parikrma featured as a clause where Yahoo said that we have been supporting this NGO for 16 years, and whoever buys will have to support them. And therefore, our school is still continuously being supported. So that's the sustainability model that I can think of. Then scalability is another issue. We're doing it through the government school medium. And of course, impact is for us to show is what our children are doing when they are growing up. I have students now who have graduated from Parikrma, went to Azim Premji University on a scholarship, graduated, did another course. After that, I have 3 students who opened 3 schools in the villages, Gulbarga. So that's our way of scaling as well. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insightful experience, ma'am. Now I request Professor Soham Sahu, sir, to start with the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ashok and Shukla. No, I have a mic here. For this fascinating discussion, and you touched upon some key issues that we always wonder in our, when we also discuss some of these issues in the classroom here at IIMB, something related to, let's say, sustainability or scalability and interacting with these multiple stakeholders. So while I was listening to both of you, I was wondering, like, one thing that you mentioned is the role of NGOs, and in your organization, the way you see it is you should be able to get out of that particular place once your job is done, right? But that kept me wondering, is that really possible when we are talking about something like education, which is embedded in the society, right? In the societal sort of context, which is evolving over time. So keeping that sort of perspective in mind, I was wondering, given that both your organizations have been in operation for several years, if not several decades, how your approaches have changed over time to address changing needs. So this is a question for both of you, and anyone you can start with that.
So I think this is also true in industry that, it's called cash cows, right? So you get out, collect your money and get out. Here, there's no money. But unless and until you have an exit strategy, I don't believe you can come up with something that's sustainable beyond yourself. So you need to have some mechanism in place. And in our case, it's the community that we have created, where the demand has been catalyzed within the community, and they will ask, right? Our GP contest, for example, is a demand side initiative. It's not a supply side initiative. So it's the demand side that keeps the supply side, account and can hold them accountable. But all of this is not a 1-2 year problem, right? I mean, we have to build this into the DNA. So it takes a few years before it is built into the DNA of the community itself. Because our communities, I mean, why do you have to go to villages? Even we are scared to question why so many potholes in our own city, right? We go around, but we don't go and fight. So can you imagine poor farmers in small villages? I mean, how are they going to navigate the system? So I think it takes a while to get them to that level. But once it's there, then it's time to exit, that they now can manage their own affairs. And I think that's the time you want to leave and address it. We have plenty of problems in this country to solve. It's not that you shut down and go home. You have another problem to solve. But you can't do the same problem for 30, 40 years. Our math program is, we christened it as Ganit Kalika Andolan. Right? We said Andolan. What does Andolan mean? Andolan means everybody is involved in it. Right? And when we christened it, I had this, if you guys have seen Richard Attenborough's movie Gandhi, there is that scene where this little boy is sitting on top of a tree, and the salt satyagraha, you can see people all converging from different sides, coming to one point where Bapuji actually takes the salt, So this is how all the stakeholders came together, right? So that's why we called it an Andolan. It's called Ganit Kalika Andolan. And it's called Ganit Kalika Andolan in all the states where we are, except I think some states, they have a different name for it, but by and large, the word Andolan holds true in this country. So to sum it up, I think you need an exit strategy. Otherwise, it will become business as usual, and that's not great.
I have a different take. As I don't want to exit. I love my children. I have 2,000 of them. 1,700 of them have graduated. I have 15,000 children in government schools. I know their names, not me alone, my teachers. They know we know their names. We know their families. We know what is troubling them. That is the kind of mentorship that we have created. And that's why we're seeing that kind of result. So sure, we will not have 95,000 schools. We don't want to have 95,000 schools because there are amazing NGOs that are doing that. We do it differently. We do it right through, and we're building relationships. So, I mean, when people ask me how do I see myself 15 years down the line, I say, yeah, I think I will be going in a wheelchair to one of my school's assembly. But the difference would be that school would have got started by a Parikrma student. That's my ambition, so I think that's the difference. But both of us are necessary because we have so many children. We need the 95,000 school, but also we need to build relationships with the children because they lack relationship. They lack the mentoring. They lack the role modeling. Yeah.
So relatedly, I was wondering, given that there has been so many economic and socioeconomic changes in this country over the last few decades, do you see your role as an NGO changing over time? The organizational role and the scope of an NGO working in the education space changing over time?
Shall I answer? Yeah, of course it has changed. All NGOs are dependent on the generosity of corporates, and therefore what happens in the corporate world and the economic there impacts us. And the kind of the CSR rule has brought in a whole lot of change. The FCRA rule has brought in a whole lot of change, and we have to be flexible. But if you're transparent, if you have the right intent, I think most of the NGOs are able to cope with it. The other change is what kind of children, potential employees that are necessary in the world. I mean, after all, what is them coming to school. For all parents want their children to be earning, right? All parents want them to have a better life than them. So what is the kind of profile of the future generation employee? We have to also look at that. And therefore, our curriculum has to get fine-tuned. Our life skill classes have to get fine-tuned for that. Would you agree?
So I can add to what Shukla is saying, which is that changing times means you got to evolve. And today, technology is a big game changer, right? We don't want another divide being created due to lack of access to technology. And in many ways, I think COVID taught us some serious lessons. Those who had access to the internet and iPads were able to do some form of learning compared to those who had no access to any devices. So at Akshara, actually, we did some interesting work. We call it blended learning. Blended learning is a mixture, is a combination of teacher plus technology. So if I have a class of, let's say, 30 kids, on Monday, I have 15 kids in the classroom. And I teach a normal class, say I teach addition. The other 15 kids are given a smartphone by the school, and they play games that we have created. We have a product, by the way, called Building Blocks, free product. If you have Android phones, you can download them. We are not supporting iOS, but Android is 92% of the country's phones. So it's called Building Blocks. It's mapped to the curriculum as a set of 475 games, goes from grade 1 through grade 8, it covers the curriculum. So we created something, a parallel lesson plan. So the lesson with the classroom kit is done in the classroom, whereas the other half of the children today are doing the same things on the phone. Tomorrow, the children who are outside come in and these kids go out. So we keep swapping them. So a device is actually used by 2 children in the school. So, my contention is that we should be able to advocate for governments to give smartphones to all the children in all the schools in the country. It's not going to cost more than 60,000 crores. If you do a back of the envelope calculation, if this system works. So we did this blended learning in a place in Odisha, a very backward area called Keonjhar. Actually, Keonjhar is where the current chief minister is from, of Odisha. The new chief minister is from there. And in that district, we did it a small pilot because we didn't have that many smartphones. I think we had 125 smartphones. We did this thing for 100 days. And the performance in math jumped by 73% in 100 days. Okay, so digital has the means to rapidly change the complexion of learning. And the children had never seen, well, they have seen, but they've never had their own phones to play with. And it was absolutely intuitive for them. I put 10 boxes there. They knew how to plug it in, get it powered, and start with it, right? And you don't have to teach them. They are digital natives. And so I think with the changing times, we got to bring in more and more of technology. Some people will argue that screens are not good for children, but everyone, you walk out on the street, you can't avoid it, right? And if you exclude them, I'm not saying give it to the first grader and the second grader, but 4th, 5th onwards, at least we should have access to, devices. And that's when you learn fastest. So that's another aspect.
Thanks. So the next question that I would like to ask you is, in your operation, especially from a social entrepreneurship perspective, there are multiple stakeholders involved, particularly the government officials, right? And often in our public system, dealing with government official may be challenging, to navigate through that process. So could you give some examples of how you approach them in your own ways, and some suggestions for aspiring social entrepreneurs about how to go about it.
Okay. So, we have this as a big challenge because we are in all the schools, right? So, but what we've learned is that you need to build relationships at all levels. Because the one that gets changed frequently is the top level, right? So in the last 20 years, it would probably be correct for me to say that the education secretary, I've seen about 25, 27 of them in the last 20 years, right? And so with the commissioner for public instruction and all that. So those are the people who get transferred more frequently. But the rest of the system, they don't get transferred so frequently. So you have to build relationships at all levels for you to be able to do things that are doable, right? Administratively doable. You're dependent on all these people. So we figured the best ways to do that. So part of my field team's role is to regularly interact with the education department, but also the rural development and Panchayati Raj department. Because they run the panchayat. So you need to talk to the panchayat development officer and, that chain. And also the CEO of the Zilla Parishad and the district collector. So we have, a schedule for them, for our people to meet with them twice a year. And so, at the senior levels and more frequently at the lower levels. But she called it building relationships, right? You have to build these relationships. That way you avoid and mitigate the loss of the top, being changed.
Yeah. I would like to add to that. First of all, I'm very bad with dealing with bureaucracy. My dad was a bureaucrat, and I'm always kind of trying to match other bureaucrats with him, and they don't match. But we have to deal with them. Okay, so during COVID, I was one of the one organization that had the schools running as long as we could, and we opened our schools much before. And although the Commission of Public Instruction, the Principal Secretary of Education, all of them knew us, at the ground level, the education officials think they're inspectors. They are not actually developers. They're not into the education, not for the true meaning of education. So they would come and threaten to close down my school just because I've kept my school open. And I would say, listen, my kids are more unsafe in the slums because they'll be running around the streets without masks. Here, we are following the distance and social distancing. We are following all the norms. Allow us to keep the schools open. But no, they would go by the rule book. So yes, relationships are very important, but it's very difficult for bureaucrats to not follow the rule book. One very senior bureaucrat told me that, the real problem with us is that we have great lofty ideas, but we don't ever look at our own feet. And how true that was. Because at the same level, when I am sitting in the NCRT meetings and, as a committee member, and the real challenge is to make them understand some of the things that will work at the grassroots and will not work. They have no idea. They are really eminent academics, but they have very little practical sense. But I find it extremely frustrating, but I go for all the meetings because I feel I have the responsibility to represent the community that they are so out of touch with. And so I feel, look, I'm a practitioner. Please, you have to listen to me. So some stakeholders are difficult to manage, but we have no other option.
Yeah. So, thank you so much, Ashok and Shukla, for your insightful discussions. We are sort of running out of time, so we'll end our panel discussion at this point. And yeah, we hope to be in touch and continue this discussion elsewhere. Thank you so much.
As we come to the end of this enriching panel discussion, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished speakers for sharing their profound insights and experiences. I would also like to thank Professor Soham Sahu for facilitating the discussion. Now, I request Professor Soham Sahu to present memento to Mr. Ashok Kamath and Dr. Bose. Please give them a round of applause.
Right.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I request Srusti Ganamukhi to present Professor Soham Sahu with a token of appreciation.
Right, thank you.
Please give them a round of applause.
Yeah, we'll do that. Lovely. Yeah, lovely to meet you.
First of all, please be seated. We have an exciting product launch that's happening right now. So I request